It started like any other evening. After dinner, I went up to my room, finished my homework, and collapsed onto my bed. As usual, my parents wished me good night. Mom leaned over to kiss my forehead, her warm smile the perfect end to the day. "Sleep well, sweetheart," she said. Dad added, "Don't forget to close the window before you sleep, like always." They left, and the house fell into silence. I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway and the soft rustle of leaves outside my window. I was almost asleep when I heard it. "Come here, sweetheart," the voice called. My eyes snapped open. It was my mom's voice, but something about it wasn't right. It sounded muffled, as if it came from outside. I sat up in bed, straining to listen. The voice came again. "Come here, help me." I walked to the window and looked outside. The streetlight faintly illuminated the yard, but it was empty. At the edge of the woods, I thought I saw a shadow moving between the trees. "Mom?" I called out, but no one answered. A moment later, the voice came again, louder this time. "Sweetheart, come here." I quickly pulled on my jeans and a hoodie. If Mom was outside and needed help, I couldn't just stay in my room. But deep inside, something felt wrong. I went downstairs, my footsteps echoing in the quiet house. The air was strangely cold, even though the windows were closed. As I reached the kitchen, I heard a faint creaking sound, like someone was moving carefully across the floor. I stopped at the back door, my hand hovering over the handle. "Mom, are you there?" I called out. Her voice responded immediately, as if she had been waiting. "Open the door, sweetheart." The voice was so familiar, but something about it felt off. It was too perfect, too rehearsed, like someone trying to mimic her. My heart pounded as I stepped back, a sense of dread creeping over me. Suddenly I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around, but there was only the empty hallway. Silence. Then her voice came again, now softer, almost a whisper. "Aren't you afraid of me?" I decided to go upstairs and check on my parents. Maybe I was just imagining things. When I opened the door to their bedroom, everything seemed normal. They were both asleep. Mom's face turned toward the window. I felt a wave of relief. "Mom?" I whispered, stepping closer. She didn't move. I leaned in to wake her, but something made me stop. Her face looked wrong. It was too still, too smooth, almost like a wax figure. Her eyes suddenly snapped open, and I stumbled backward. Her gaze was empty, like she was staring through me. "Why won't you listen to me?" she said in a cold, unfamiliar voice. I bolted from the room, slamming the door shut behind me. My heart raced as I leaned against the wall, struggling to catch my breath. Back in my room, I tried to make sense of what had just happened. Was I dreaming or losing my mind? Then I heard her voice again. This time it was coming from outside. "Sweetheart, come here." I moved to the window and looked out. At the edge of the woods, I saw her. She was standing still, her long hair blowing in the wind. "You can't hide from me," her voice whispered, but it didn't come from outside. It echoed in my head. Her face. I couldn't make out the details, but her eyes glowed faintly in the darkness. Her smile was wide, unnaturally so, stretching across her face. I wanted to close the window, but I couldn't move. My feet felt rooted to the floor. She took a step closer to the house. "Come to me, sweetheart," she said. The whisper was quiet, but every cell in my body screamed that this wasn't my mom. Summoning all my strength, I slammed the window shut and backed away. But the voice didn't stop. Now it was coming from everywhere. "Help me." I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to find out what was calling me. I stepped into the backyard. A light fog covered the ground, and the night air was colder than I expected. I walked across the grass, which felt unnaturally soft underfoot, as if it was waiting to swallow me. "You're such a good boy," her voice said, now warm and kind. I moved toward the woods, unable to stop myself. She stood ahead, her silhouette gliding between the trees. "Why did you leave the house?" I shouted, trying to sound brave. She didn't answer, only took another step closer. Eventually we reached a small clearing. The moon illuminated her face, and my stomach churned with fear. Her features were horrifyingly distorted. Her eyes were empty sockets. Her mouth stretched unnaturally wide, and her teeth gleamed, sharp as knives. "You're mine now," she whispered, reaching out a hand. I froze, but instinct took over, and I turned to run. The forest seemed alive. The trees moved, their branches reaching for me, while roots burst from the ground, trying to trip me. Voices surrounded me, all whispering, "You've gone too far." I tripped and fell, the earth beneath me shifting like it was alive. Blackened roots wrapped around my legs, pulling me down. Suddenly, she was there again, standing above me. "You'll stay here forever," she said, leaning closer. I don't know how I escaped. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on the grass outside my house. The first rays of sunlight were peeking through the trees, and birds chirped as if nothing had happened. But I knew the truth. I looked up at my parents' bedroom window. Their silhouettes were visible behind the curtains, but something about them seemed wrong. I couldn't bring myself to go inside. Eventually, I forced myself into the house. It was eerily silent. I climbed the stairs and hesitated at their bedroom door. When I opened it, they were lying in bed, just as I had left them. But something was off. "Mom?" I whispered. She turned slowly, her eyes opening. They were hollow, the same empty voids I had seen in the forest. "Why did you run away, sweetheart?" she whispered, her voice echoing in my head. I screamed and ran, slamming the door behind me. Everything has been different since then. Every night, I hear her voice calling to me. It pleads, beckons, promises safety and warmth. Sometimes it sounds like she's right outside my room. "Sweetheart, why won't you let me in?" she whispers. But I know it's not her. I don't sleep anymore. I sit in the dark, hugging my knees, waiting for the sun to rise. Sometimes I hear soft footsteps in the hallway. One night the voice grew louder than ever. It didn't whisper, it screamed. "You belong to me. Come back." I couldn't take it anymore. I stepped outside and stared at the black wall of trees. The fog curled around the trunks like it was alive. The forest was waiting. I took a step forward. When I woke again, I was in the forest. Shadowy figures surrounded me, their glowing eyes piercing the darkness. They were the ones who had heard the call before me. Their faces were pale, their bodies dissolving into the mist. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I knew then. I was one of them now. I returned home, but everything had changed. The house was empty, my parents gone. I realized I no longer belonged to this world. Now I am the voice. Every night I hear my own cry echoing from the forest. "Come here, sweetheart." And I'm terrified that someone else will hear it too.